When we think of Hiroshima, we often think of the bomb, the mushroom cloud, the geopolitics, but we're going to look at it from a totally different angle. We're going to see it through the eyes of one man and the two photos he took that by all rights should never ever exist. This is the human story of that day, captured just hours after the world changed forever.
And this quote, this right here, is the whole story in a nutshell. It's from the photographer himself, Yoshito Matsushige. Imagine being there, in that moment, with a camera in your hand. What do? It's an impossible choice, and the one he made gives us a window into a moment we were never meant to see.
So who was this guy? Well, Matsushige was a press photographer for a local paper, and he was embedded with the military. What he did that day, it was a profound act of defiance, because these photos you're about to see were, quite literally, forbidding. And that's the key here. It was actually illegal to take pictures of anything that showed the devastation of war. It was seen as harming public morale. So these images survived against all odds, just like the people in them. For years, the negatives were passed around in secret, and they were almost lost completely before finally being restored in the 1970s. Okay, so to really understand these photos, you have to understand the moment they were taken. Let's rewind the clock just 3 hours to a city that had absolutely no idea it was about to become ground zero for a weapon that would change everything. I mean, picture it. It's rush hour. Kids are walking to school. The trams are packed with people heading to work. Sure, air raid sirens are a part of life, but when a single lone B-29 appeared high in the sky, nobody really thought anything of it. It was just another morning in a very long war. But inside that plane was the end result of the Manhattan Project, a secret weapon that cost $2 billion to develop. And then at 8:15 a.m., it detonated. The fireball hit 6,000 degrees Celsius, literally as hot as the surface of the sun. People were just vaporized. Their bodies turned to carbon before their brains could even process what was happening. Then came the shock wave, a wind, 1,000 miles per hour that flattened more than 60,000 buildings in an instant. And just like that, in a single flash, 70,000 people were gone. You know, this quote from a survivor really captures the sheer confusion of it all. For the people on the ground, there was no iconic mushroom cloud. There was just sudden darkness, a storm of debris, and the violent, deafening end of their world. Which brings us right here, to the Miyuki Bridge. This is where our photographer, Yoshito Matsushige, finds himself. And it's the setting for his forbidden photos, a kind of boundary line between the world of the living and the world of the dead. The city center was just a raging inferno. The bridge was one of the only ways out, a spot just beyond the reach of the flames. So this is where the wounded gathered, hoping for help, or maybe just for a place to die. And this is the scene of quiet, unimaginable desperation that Matsushige walks into. We can actually start to piece together what was happening through the memories of survivors. See that canister on the ground? You might think it's water. It's not. It's rapeseed oil, a desperate makeshift remedy for some of the most horrific burns imaginable. And when they ran out of that, they started using thick engine oil from a nearby train depot. And then you hear a memory like this one from Mitsuko Kochi, who was just 13 years old when she saw this on the bridge. This stops being a statistic, doesn't it? It becomes this deeply personal human moment of grief. She said she's thought about that woman every single day of her life since. And when you look closely at these photos and hear the stories, a heartbreaking pattern starts to emerge. A shocking number of the victims weren't soldiers. They were just kids. I mean, just look at this number. It's staggering. Nearly a quarter of all the people killed were teenagers. But why? Well, because in wartime Japan, children as young as 12 and 13 had been mobilized for the war effort. They were working for the army, tearing down buildings near the city center to create fire breaks. This put thousands of them directly at ground zero. And the horror just got compounded by the cold logic of war. This testimony comes from a young Army cadet who was there on the bridge. He says his orders were crystal clear. Save the soldiers first. Women and children, they had to wait. Their lives were considered less valuable to the war effort. For the thousands who actually survived the initial blast and the fires, a whole new invisible terror began. A mysterious illness started to spread, a plague that nobody could understand. The survivors became known as hibakusha, and they didn't just have to deal with cancers, radiation sickness, and these horrifying scars. They also faced a cruel social stigma. People were afraid of them. They thought their sickness might be contagious. Many had to hide the fact they were a survivor just to get a job or to get married. And here you see these two completely different worlds. On one side, you have the American military, which set up the Atomic Bomb Casualty Commission. They were seizing medical records, classifying all this data as top secret. But on the other side, you had the Japanese survivors who were living this absolute nightmare. Their suffering was being studied, yes, but it was also kept quiet, partly because no one wanted it to get in the way of future plans for civilian nuclear power. But this story, it doesn't end with them as victims. For so many of the Hibakusha, surviving became a profound responsibility. It became a lifelong mission to make sure something like this could never, ever happen again.
Remember Sanao Tsuboi, the man from the bridge who used a stone to write "Tsubo is dying here"? Well, he didn't die. He lived. And he saw that moment not as an end, but as a kind of rebirth. He and so many others dedicated the rest of their lives to sharing their stories, to being a living reminder of the true cost of nuclear war. The survivors took on this sacred duty to bear witness, to make sure the world would never forget. Yoshito Matsushigai risked everything to take those pictures, to help us do just that. Now, as the last of the Hibakusha are passing away, that duty, it falls to us. Their mission was to remember. So the question is, what's ours?